Hello everyone. Today we continue with our topic on unemployment. In previous lectures, we have covered what exactly unemployment is. We have learned that in order to be registered, to be officially classified as unemployed, you need to satisfy certain criteria. Not every person without a job can be called unemployed. You need to be an individual of working age, so children or pensioners don't count as unemployed. You need to be prepared to work at the going wage rate, and you need to be actively looking for a job. In order to calculate the unemployment rate, you would need to divide the number of unemployed people in the society by the amount of labor force, by the amount of economically active population, not by total population, by labor force. Previously, we have also learned that there is a relationship between unemployment rate and the duration of unemployment. The higher the unemployment rate, the longer unemployment tends to last. And the longer you are unemployed, the more difficult it is to find a job. We have also went through some measures of unemployment, how exactly it's measured in practice, and we have covered a few empirical facts about unemployment. Today we will focus on the remaining parts of this particular topic, on the remaining learning objectives. Specifically, we will cover what are the types of unemployment. There are different types, different names for unemployment because unemployment exists for different reasons. Then we will go through a very important concept of natural unemployment rate, and we will finish with the government policy which can be used to reduce unemployment. The first thing which we need to learn is that there are many different reasons why people become unemployed, and as a result we can separate or classify unemployment into different types. So first of all, you need to know that unemployment depends on the relationship between demand and supply of labor. Like in any other market, we can draw the demand and supply diagram for labor. We can work out the equilibrium situation in the labor market, and we can also find that if there is some discrepancy between demand and supply in the labor market, this can cause unemployment. What also you need to know is that demand for labor, which affects unemployment rate, will depend on the demand for goods. Because strictly speaking, why do companies need workers? They need workers in order to produce some output. So strictly speaking, the higher the demand for goods which the company is facing, the higher production it will want to generate, the higher output it will need to produce to satisfy this demand, and the more workers it will need to hire. So unemployment rate in the society will be lower. There will be high demand for workers and low unemployment. So unemployment depends on the demand for labor, and demand for labor depends on the demand for goods. And that is why when demand for goods changes, it can cause unemployment in different markets. So first type of unemployment which we'll need to investigate is called structural unemployment. U always stands for unemployment in macroeconomics. Structural unemployment occurs when there are some changes in the structure of the economy, when something happens to consumer demand, when the pattern of consumer demand changes dramatically, and as a result, employment and unemployment in some industries can change. For example, if there are changes in consumer demand simply because particular products become obsolete due to technological advancements. For example, typewriters. We don't use typewriters anymore. We use computers and printers. We don't use analog TVs anymore. All TV signal is now digital, so we don't need these products, which means that if you worked in the industry which produced typewriters, probably you would be unemployed by now because no one wants your services anymore. No one wants to buy the products which you used to produce. Apart from this, due to technological advancements, there will be less demand for workers overall because workers can be replaced by machines, by equipment. For example, if you used to work as a till operator in a supermarket and your supermarket decided to install a few self-checkout points, you will not be needed anymore. So due to technological advancements, there will be less workers required, and as a result, there will be high unemployment in this industry. Apart from this, structural unemployment will also include some regional unemployment, which can occur due to a concentration of particular industries in a specific geographical area. For example, if the whole area, maybe a town or a region, depends on a particular manufacturer, like a coal mine or something like that, and when it closes down because there is lower demand for coal, because we move towards renewable energy sources, as a result, there will be a spike in unemployment level in this particular geographical area, simply because the major employer in the area has closed down. So as a result, it will cause regional unemployment. These changes are inevitable. We cannot stop technological progress. We cannot change consumer demand. Consumers will always want some new, better products, and many companies will always release new products to the market, which will reduce demand for previous versions of them. We cannot change technological developments which can affect closure of certain industries. And therefore, because we cannot prevent this from happening, structural unemployment is inevitable. Time is needed for adjustments in the labor market. Some time is needed for demand and supply to come back to a new equilibrium level. And during this period, there will be some unemployment. For example, if you used to work for a coal mine which has closed down, or you worked for a car manufacturer which has moved its production to another country like China or another country with cheap labor, and you've lost your job, you will be able to adjust. You will remain unemployed for some period of time, but then later you will be able to retrain, to get new skills. You can become, for example, a taxi driver, or get some additional skills, or start up a new business, or you can relocate to another area where there will be demand for your skills, but there will be some time required for these adjustments, and during this period of time you will remain unemployed. There is nothing wrong about it. It's inevitable, and that is why structural unemployment will always exist, and it can never be equal to zero in a free market, perfectly functioning economy. It's okay, it's inevitable. Another type of inevitable unemployment is called frictional or surge or in between jobs unemployment. This is the situation which occurs when people are unemployed for a period of time due to imperfection in information flows. So they are looking for a new job which does exist. There is a vacancy for a person with your skills and qualifications, but you need some time to find this vacancy. The information about the labor market, about the jobs available, is not perfect. You simply need time to find this available vacancy. So, for example, you used to purchase a particular newspaper where you search for jobs, or you look at a particular website which lists available vacancy, and maybe there is a job for you around the corner, but you're simply not aware about this particular vacancy simply because they advertise on another website, on another portal, and you don't read this portal, and you will need some time to find out about this particular vacancy. This is what is called frictional or surge or in between jobs unemployment. Again, kind of inevitable, because you cannot have immediate information about all available vacancies if you are searching for a job, and similarly companies won't have available data about all possible workers searching for a job right now. Apart from this, there is another type of unemployment called seasonal unemployment, which is quite intuitive, I think. It's quite easy to understand. It occurs when demand for certain products fluctuates with the seasons of the year. For example, if you work in agriculture, you will probably be extremely busy in spring, summer, and autumn, but you will have nothing to do in winter. So basically, if you worked in this industry, you will be dismissed. You will have no jobs, no source of income in winter, simply because no one needs your skills in winter. Or if you live in an area where there are lots of tourist flows, you live in a resort area, for example, there will be very strong demand during holiday periods. For example, you work in hospitality sector or in a restaurant, there will be lots of tourists in summer, but it will be very, very quiet in winter. And again, there will be some seasonal unemployment. If you used to work as a waiter in a restaurant, you will probably be unemployed in winter. You will need to find another source of income to support yourself when the period is quiet, when there is no demand for your services. All of these situations are unavoidable, and because economy and therefore labor market are constantly changing, they're constantly evolving, new jobs are being created all the time. New businesses are being created, which require workers. Some old jobs will die out. Some businesses will close down. Some industries will stop to exist. It's okay. It's inevitable. New workers will join the workforce. For example, when you will graduate, you will become unemployed for some period of time. You will start searching for a job. You will become part of the labor market. Some people will move out of labor force. Some people will become retired or immigrate. Labor market is constantly changing. And because of this, even when the economy is functioning normally, there will be some amount of unemployment in the society. It's impossible to reach zero unemployment rate. It's okay, it's fine. And that is why these types of unemployment are called natural unemployment rate. Natural unemployment rate is the rate of unemployment which exists in the economy when we work normally, when the economy operates at its capacity, when it works at full capacity, so-called full employment unemployment level. So it can sound quite strange. Natural unemployment rate is the rate which exists when the economy operates at full employment level. In other words, when the economy produces according to its long-term potential, when it works normally to the full capacity, when there are no idle resources and there is still some unemployment, this is what we call natural unemployment rate. Natural unemployment rate will include three types, and this is what you will need to memorize for your exam. Natural unemployment rate will include seasonal, structural, and frictional unemployment. These are normal, good unemployment types. They are inevitable, there is nothing wrong with them, they are okay, we can live with them. That is why they are called natural unemployment rate. One of the exam questions which can be asked in your next exam would sound like that, something like this. Frictional unemployment is the result of. So have a look at this, stop the video, write down the answer, and continue when you are ready. Ready? Okay, so the correct answer would be B. Frictional unemployment or job search unemployment or in between jobs unemployment is the result of imperfections in information flows. It exists because workers and employers are being ill-informed about the labor market. There is no perfect information about available vacancies, and as a result, the time is required to find the job. And that is why during this time, workers will remain unemployed. It's not a shift in the pattern of consumer demand. It's not caused by this, because changes in the consumer demand will cause structural unemployment, another type, not frictional. So A would be incorrect. Introduction of new technology will also cause structural changes and will result in structural unemployment. So this would be incorrect too. Economy entering the recessionary phase of the business cycle would cause cyclical unemployment, which we'll cover in a minute. Again, not frictional, so D would be incorrect. And E, employers responding to the time of the year and cutting back on their production, would be seasonal unemployment, not frictional. That is why the correct answer would be B. So we've covered the natural unemployment rate, which is an okay unemployment rate. There is nothing wrong with natural unemployment. However, there are some other bad types of unemployment, and this will include cyclical and so-called real wage or disequilibrium unemployment. Let's have a look at them. Cyclical unemployment is also quite easy to understand. Sometimes it's called Keynesian or demand-deficient unemployment. It depends on the phase of the business cycle. It is simply caused by economic recession and lack of demand. As we know, when the economy moves into recession, consumer demand drops. We have covered this in the previous lecture. Aggregate demand will be low, production level will be low, which means that there will be less workers required to produce output to satisfy this lower demand. As a result, firms will cut back on production and they will dismiss some of their staff or stop hiring new workers. And as a result, unemployment in the society will increase. Moreover, in the recession, some companies will go bankrupt and people will lose their jobs. So cyclical unemployment will increase. As the economy recovers, cyclical unemployment, which depends on the stage of the business cycle, will go down. There will be stronger demand, companies will start to expand, they will increase their production, they will start hiring new workers, and as a result, there will be less unemployment in the society. This is what we call cyclical unemployment. This is within our control, and we can eliminate this because we can manipulate the business cycle. Another type of unemployment occurs due to imperfections in the market mechanism itself. It's called real wage or classical or disequilibrium unemployment. And as you can guess from the name, it's caused by the disequilibrium in the labor market. As I mentioned previously, we can analyze labor market using the familiar demand and supply diagram. So let's have a look. We have quantity of labor here, quantity of labor, employment level along horizontal axis. As always, like in any other market, we have quantity along horizontal axis. We have price of our product along vertical axis, price of labor, which will be real wage rate. We will have downward sloping demand for labor. Why is it downward sloping? Because if real wage is high, companies will want to hire very few staff members. It will be cheaper for them to use capital-intensive technology. It's very expensive to pay to their staff, so they will try to replace them with machines. They will try to avoid hiring new staff because it's expensive. Well, when the wage rate is so cheap, when it's very low, demand for labor will be stronger. Companies will be more willing to hire more staff and demand will be stronger. And there is upward sloping supply of labor. Why is that? Because the higher the wage rate, the more incentives workers will have to offer their services to the labor market. I guess you would have much more incentive to work to offer your services to the labor market if I offer you, say, £1,000 per hour rather than £2 per hour. So supply of labor will be higher when real wage rate is higher too. Generally, in a normally operating free market, you will have an equilibrium in the labor market. The market will clear. There will be some equilibrium wage rate established, which will determine equilibrium amount of employment in the society and equilibrium amount of unemployment. There will be no disequilibrium unemployment in a perfectly functioning labor market. However, unfortunately, sometimes there will be some disequilibrium situations caused by interventions. For example, when trade unions push wages to too high level and they request a higher wage rate compared to the equilibrium wage rate. If a company is forced, or a particular industry is forced to pay a considerably higher wage rate compared to the equilibrium value. Or when government sets new minimum wage laws and again requests that everyone, all companies, all employers pay a wage which is above the equilibrium level. And as a result, the wages are pushed above equilibrium, right, which will cause a discrepancy between quantity demanded and quantity supplied. Quantity supplied, this point on the diagram, will determine the amount of job candidates available. Supply of labor at this new current wage rate will be relatively high. There will be, let's say, 100 people looking for a job, willing to work. However, at the same wage rate, this point on the demand curve will determine quantity demanded. Firms will be willing to hire this particular number of staff. They will be prepared to hire this many workers, let's say 20. So there will be a gap between quantity demanded and quantity supply. Supply of labor, number of staff available, number of workers who are competing for these vacancies will be considerably higher. There will be, let's say, 20 vacancies and 100 people willing to get a job. And as a result, there will be some unemployment in the market. There will be 80 people who are unable to get a job. We've had this type of graph already when we analyzed deficits or shortages and excesses or surpluses in the market in the microeconomics part of the module. I think it was lecture 2 or 3, and in your exam you've had to calculate this disequilibrium amounts. So you are familiar with the concept already. Now in this topic we simply apply this to the labor market, and this diagram illustrates how exactly government intervention or trade unions intervention in fact makes more harm than good. These trade unions who wanted to improve living standards of working class, who wanted them to receive higher wages, in fact have created artificial unemployment in the industry. Now, previously all people who were willing to work were able to get a job and they were paid the equilibrium wage rate. But now, instead of having, let's say, 50 workers in employment, they forced the industry to hire only 20. And as a result, the overall situation in the industry has deteriorated. Many people lost their jobs and we have created artificial unemployment, which we didn't have before. One of the exam questions which can be asked based on this material would sound like that. Which of the following defines real wage unemployment? As always, stop the video, write down your answer, and continue when you are ready. Ready? The correct answer would be A. This is exactly what we've just covered. Real wage unemployment or disequilibrium unemployment will occur due to real wages being set above the equilibrium level due to intervention by trade unions or minimum wage legislation. That's basically a definition of the real wage unemployment.